Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've ever spent hours, days, or, let's be honest, even weeks, just repeating the exact same stuff over and over again, desperately trying to commit it to memory, you're going to want to pay super close attention today. We're diving into a genuinely fascinating, science-backed tool that's going to drastically cut down your repetition time. And no, we're not talking about some clunky new app or a complicated mnemonic trick. We're talking about working directly with your own biology to optimize exactly how your brain stores information.
Now, to actually understand how this works, we've kind of got to take a little trip back in history. Ever wonder why medieval communities used to throw children into freezing cold rivers? Yeah, I know, it sounds absolutely brutal, right? But believe it or not, they did this for a very specific reason. When a community needed a child to forever remember a significant legal ruling or a major historic event, they would literally toss that kid right into icy water the second the event was over. They genuinely believed that the sheer, sudden shock of the cold would physically stamp a lifelong memory right into the child's mind.
Section 1. The medieval memory hack, from folklore to modern neurobiology. Okay, let's dive right into this.
As completely unhinged as that historical practice sounds, modern science actually proves they were tapping into something totally fundamental about how we humans learn. It all comes down to memory consolidation. See, we often make the mistake of thinking memory is just a byproduct of sheer effort. Like, if I stare at this page long enough, I'll remember it, right? But physically, memory consolidation is literally the stamping down of information into your neural architecture. It's the final common pathway for learning. And it doesn't just happen by magic because something is quote-unquote important. It happens because a very specific neurochemical cocktail gets released in your brain.
Section 2. The chemistry of memory, the brain's save button. Let's look at what actually triggers that button.
So, the primary ingredients in this chemical cocktail? Adrenaline and norepinephrine. When these specific neurochemicals are released into your system, they essentially act as a giant, flashing neon flag for your brain. They tell your nervous system, hey, whatever just happened right now, whatever info we just processed, it's absolutely crucial, and we need to keep it for the long haul.
Section 3. The ice water experiment, hacking the rate of learning. Now, what's really amazing here is how scientists prove the power of this chemical flag. Neuroscientists James McGaugh and Larry Cahill literally spent decades figuring out how to manipulate the rate at which human beings learn, and they ran this incredible experiment. They took two groups and gave them a completely boring, emotionally flat paragraph to read. Group A just went about their normal routine and, predictably, forgot the text almost instantly. But Group B, they were asked to plunge their arms into freezing ice water the exact minute they finished reading. The result? No way around it, they remembered that mundane text perfectly. The breakthrough here is just profound. To quote the research, because the ice water triggered a spike in adrenaline, the subjects remembered that boring information as clearly as if it had been an intense, life-changing event. I mean, really think about the power of that for a second. The information itself wasn't emotionally intense at all, but by artificially creating that adrenaline spike right after reading it, their brains were essentially tricked into locking it in.
Section 4. The Adrenaline Protocol. Actionable steps to cut repetition time. Let's talk about how you can actually use this.
All right, let's shift from the lab science to the exact step-by-step protocol you can start applying to your own life right now. The application is surprisingly straightforward. Step 1, you got to engage in a calm, alert, high-focus learning bout. Whether you're studying for a medical board exam, practicing a new language, or trying to memorize a business pitch, you want your encoding phase to be highly focused but calm. Step 2 is where the magic happens. You deliberately spike your adrenaline at the very tail end or the immediate second after you finish. So the learning phase requires calm focus, but the immediate aftermath requires deliberate intensity.
And don't worry, you don't need to go find a medieval freezing river to do this. There are plenty of safe, highly effective methods to trigger this state. You could use deliberate cold exposure, like hopping into a cold shower or an ice bath. If the cold just isn't your thing, you can use physical exertion, a hard run, or a high-intensity exercise snack, like literally sprinting up a flight of stairs for a minute or two works wonders. Interestingly enough, you can even use pharmacology. Most of us drink coffee before we sit down to work, right? But if you time your caffeine or a supplement like alpha-GPC so that it peaks in your bloodstream exactly as you are finishing your session, it works perfectly to stamp down that memory.
Section 5. Timing the spike. Understanding the adrenaline delta. And this brilliantly illustrates the real nuance of the protocol. Execution is everything here, and it all comes down to the delta, which is the difference in your adrenaline levels over time. Notice how during the focus and encoding phase, your adrenaline remains nice and low so you aren't frantic or distracted. Then bam,
You get that sharp, acute spike immediately after learning, and finally, it drops way back down for deep rest and sleep. It's this sharp contrast, the sudden jump from low to high, that actually pushes the brain's save button.
Now, I want to make a really clear distinction here because this is absolutely crucial. The goal is not chronic stress, being stressed out all day with a constantly high baseline of cortisol and epinephrine. That actually inhibits learning and wrecks your immune system. What we're leveraging here is an acute spike, just a brief, highly controlled burst of adrenaline that triggers rapid memory consolidation.
Implementing this requires a major paradigm flip that pretty much upends all the traditional study advice we've ever been given. The old way dictates that you finish studying and then you immediately go take a nap or relax to quote-unquote absorb the information, right? Well, the new protocol creates a total pattern interrupt. You finish studying, you immediately initiate a brief adrenaline spike, and only then do you go relax.
Now, to be perfectly clear, that relaxation part does remain crucial. The adrenaline spike is simply the chemical tag telling your brain what to prioritize. But the actual physical strengthening of those neural connections, the literal structural wiring happening in your brain, that still takes place later on, during deep sleep and non-sleep deep rest. So you literally have the power to consciously direct your brain's biological save button now. I mean, if a brief moment of deliberate intensity can completely rewire how fast you absorb information, what other biological levers are we leaving completely untouched in our daily routines? Seriously, try this protocol out on your very next learning project. Think about how much faster you could grow if you finally started working with your biology instead of against it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.